Hello and welcome all. Welcome to the week 3 session for mentoring for AWS Cloud Practitioner Certification. Let us have a look of what we have covered till now and what we'll be covering this week. So in the week 1, we did cover basics of cloud computing and a bit about security and compliance. We went through the AWS white paper. We created a free tier account. I hope everyone now has a free tier account or an account from your workplace on which you are trying some hands-on. In the second week, we did look into a few of the AWS core services. We were not able to complete that, so we'll continue that today a bit. But we looked into the networking part of it. We created a VPC from scratch. We looked into security groups, network ACLs. Both the concepts are really important. We looked into creating a EC2 instance. We were not able to look into storage or DB. We'll try and touch on storage today. But all of that would be covered by large in your 6 hours free digital training, and that is really important. So please go through that. And today we'll be covering a bit of the core services that we were not able to cover last time. We'll start from where we left last time, and then we'll look into billing and pricing a part of it. And that would be as per from like the mentoring perspective that we need to share with you. After that, it's more about having once you've completed your 6 hour digital training, go for a few practice exams. You can find WizLabs is pretty good. I think there is a 50% off going on in that site, which is really good, and it will be more than enough. We all can together also have a quick practice test, next week or next to next week, based on when most of the people in the group would be ready for that. And then after that, you can go ahead and book your exam date. And after that, we will be starting into a Solution Architect Associate certification preparation. But yeah, for today, let's dive into where we left last time. So I'll just recap a bit. Last time we did create a EC2 instance. If you guys remember, I kept it running in the state as it is, and then we connected to it. Let us connect to EC2 instance connect. There was a question that in case if EC2 instance was in private network, how are we going to access it directly from here? It will be that you will be having a EC2 instance. It's either called a bastion host or a jump box on a public network, and you will be able to access all the resources in your private network through that resource. So like this particular EC2 instance is in public subnet, so I'm able to access this. So through this, I'll be able to access any resources in the private subnet. Then here we looked into that whether the AWS CLI is configured. So we found that AWS CLI is configured. We tried to access AWS S3, and it gave us an error, unable to locate credentials. So the two ways to do is obviously configure the credentials here, but that will not be the right way to do it. The right way is to assign EC2 instance a role. So we tried attaching that last week, and we found an error. So I'm going to explain what exactly what went wrong there. So when you go to IAM, and I'm going to create a role. So let me first show what went wrong last time. So what happened was we were giving S3 full access, but we were giving the trust relationship. I'll show how we did, how we went wrong there. But this should have been the trusted identity should have been EC2. So we should be giving permission to EC2 to access S3. So what we did was we gave permission to S3 to access S3. So that was the wrong stuff that happened. So what we'll do is we're going to delete this role. And we're going to create a role again. AWS service. So common use case is EC2. So what I did last time was, after EC2, I did select S3. It was like either the common use case or which service do you want to give the access to. So it's a EC2. I should not have selected S3. So because we want to give EC2 the access for S3, I'm going to select EC2. Then I'm going to go to next permissions. The permissions I need to give for S3. So I'm going to give S3 full access. So now EC2 is having the full access for S3. tags is not required. I'm going to do review, and then I'm going to go C2 access, create role. So now when I see this role, if I go to trust relationship, you'll be able to find that the identity provider is ec2.amazonaws.com. This is that the trusted entity is EC2, and EC2 is able to assume the role. And that particular role which we have, the permission that it has is Amazon S3 access. So now when we'll try and, okay, let me go back to EC2. So if you see right now the security tab, IAM role, there is no role attached to it. I need to attach it. So I'm going to go to actions, security, modify IAM role. Now I will be able to see this role, EC2 S3 access. So I'm going to attach this, click on save. Now my EC2 instance has this role and it gets propagated instantly. So if I go here and do the same command, it is showing me the two buckets, right? So if I go to my S3, so I see I have two buckets. So let's say you have any specific application and that particular application is accessing the S3 or DynamoDB or any other AWS service, then the role that needs to be attached to this particular EC2 instance should be having permissions for all that. And that's how you will be able to, provide authorization and authentication to your services. Okay. So that's what I had to cover on the EC2 part. So we created a EC2 from scratch and it was running. So let's go and look into S3. Okay. So for S3, we need to understand a few things. So what exactly is a S3? It's a simple storage service. It's object storage. Everything is stored in S3 as an object. And I'll talk about availability, and durability, 11 nines and stuff. But it's mainly designed for highly durable and available storage, where you will be able to store millions of application companies. So to understand the different types of we have a lot of features in that, but focus would be mainly from the certification perspective and from understanding it will be the storage classes that we'll have to understand. So S3 has multiple kinds of storage classes. S3 standard, which will be the by default when you'll create it, and we'll create a S3 bucket to see that. By default, it will be a S3 standard, which offers a high durability, availability, and performance. So to understand the difference between a durability and availability is that because it is always said that it is durable for 11 nines, okay, and the availability is 99.99%. Durability means the data once stored in S3 is stored in a way that it is not getting corrupted. So that data, a specific bit is not changed at all. You'll be always able to retrieve that particular information that has been stored in S3 or the object that has been stored in S3. Availability means that when you are trying to access it, whether are you able to access it or not. So there is a possibility that behind the scene S3 stores data across multiple availability zones. There is a possibility that when you are trying to access, then might be it's designed for 99% availability. Your data might not be accessible at that particular moment, but that doesn't mean that data is lost or data is corrupted. It is there, and that particular guarantee of the data is durable is 11 nines. So that's the kind of difference between durability and the availability. Okay, and as I said, it's resilient against events that impact an entire availability zone. Even if an entire availability zone goes down, you might not be able to access it at that particular moment, but your data is safe. Okay, that's assistant. So by default, you will be saving your data in S3 standard, where it is replicated across multiple availability zones, and you will be able to access it, when you need it. We'll come back to this, the intelligent tiering part of it, the storage class. But before that, let's look into the infrequent access. So there's another class which is S3 standard infrequent access. This means that the data that you're accessing is not very frequent. Okay, then you if that is the case, then you can always move your data from S3 standard to S3 standard infrequent class and save some cost. Hope that makes sense. So this gives you a kind of a better uh, cost, and then the downside of it, the availability, because you're saying that you're infrequently accessing it, the availability goes down from 99.99% to 99.9%. The durability remains the same, right? Your data once saved is not going to get lost or corrupted, and it's like guaranteed up to 11 nines. But S3 standard has availability of 99.99%, and infrequent access has availability of 99.9%. There is a life cycle management through which you can actually transfer data from one storage class to other storage class. Then we have another storage class which is S3 one zone infrequent access. This would be even less costlier. You'll be able to save even more money, because like unlike S3 storage class which stores data in a minimum of 3 availability zones, S3 one zone IA stores in single availability zones and costs 20% less than S3 standard IA. So here, in case if your data, you're okay that your data, even if it gets lost, you'll be able to recreate it. For example, like you're uploading an image, and then you're creating a thumbnail of the image. Okay, and you're saying that the actual image should be saved in S3 standard, but all the thumbnails that we create can be stored in one zone frequent in infrequent access. Reason being, even if the thumbnail gets lost, even if that availability zone goes down, you'll be always able to create the thumbnail again, and so on and so forth. So when you think that the overall storage cost is more than the recreation cost of the particular object, you will be going for S3 one zone infrequent access. Again, as you see, the durability is same, 11 nines, but your availability went down from 99.9 to 99.5. And then is we have archives. There are two archive options that we have. One is Amazon S3 Glacier, and one is Amazon S3 Glacier Deep Archive. So the difference again, that in Amazon S3 Glacier, the retrievable time can be from minutes to hours. Because it is archive, you will not be able to access it within milliseconds or seconds as you're able to do it in S3 standard or one zone IA or IA. Because you're putting them in archive, you'll be able to configure your trial times between minutes to hours. But when it comes to deep archive, then it means that it is going to take retrieval time up to 12 hours. So when you actually don't, so there are a lot of times when you save data just for the compliance perspective or the regulatory perspective, and then you do have this 24-hour SLA to fetch the data. In those cases, you will be using deep archive, because that will be a huge amount of data. You need to save your data for last 7 years, and storing that data in archives would be much more cost efficient than storing the data in S3 standard or S3 IA or one zone IA. Now let's come to S3 intelligent tiering. So we have all these options, but then it was customer's responsibility to choose the right storage class, and that was a bit of work that customer had to do. So we introduced S3 intelligent tiering, which is designed to optimize cost by automatically moving data to the most cost effective access tier. So based on the number of requests S3 is getting, it will be able to identify which storage class this particular object should be actually belonging to, right? and then it is going to automatically move that data without performance impact or operational overhead. So customers will not have to do on their own. It works by storing objects in two access tiers, one tier that is optimized for frequent access and another low cost tier and that is optimized for infrequent access. So that's about intelligent tiering. Again, durability is 11 nines and availability is 99.9%. Okay. Having said that, we do have a very cool table here that explains all of what I have said in a very, like a tabular format. So let's look at this. S3 standard, intelligent tiering, standard IA, one zone IA, glacier, and deep glacier. All of them have 11 nines, but the availability changes. Standard is 99.99, then it's just 99.9. One zone IA is 99.5. Then glacier, the difference here would be the retrieval times. Number of availability zones your data is replicated across. See, greater than 3 for all of them except one zone IA, where you'll be paying much less, but at the cost of the data is not replicated to multiple availability zones. So have a look at these. And for the pricing of these, you will not be tested on how much one costs or other, but you might be like, scenario based question that, what is the most cost efficient way to save this particular object when the object can be recreated easily. In that case, it will be one zone IA. Or what's the most cost efficient way to save a object when it needs to be retrieved within few minutes. As long as it is few minutes, you'll have to go to S3 glacier. If it is few seconds or milliseconds, you have to be S3 standard. If it is few days, go to S3 glacier. So it will depend upon that. Okay, hope that explains S3. And any questions before we look into the S3 management console and we create a bucket of our own?
Yeah, hi Prasad.
Yes.
Talk about retrieval table, retrieval cost.
Sorry?
The data retrieval cost from these S3 storage class.
The pricing part, right?
Yes.
So for the pricing, for anything related to pricing, you can always go to. You see, there is, you will be able to find the price here also. Pricing you'll be able to find here also, where it is going to tell specifically, for S3 standard for the first TB per month, this is the price. First next 40, this is the price. So you have all these listed here in a very transparent manner. Or you can always go to AWS calculator.
No, my question is like once the data is put in right in S3, they will also charge for retrieval and all that stuff, right? So basically, my background of my question is like when you are trying to design, like when you have to select, like based on what criteria you would select. Like I know you have shown availability, durability, that stuff. Apart from that, so what are the other costs that are that would be incurred, like when you try to retrieve the data from?
Exactly. So that's what we go to create estimate. Before designing any application, whether for storage or for compute, networking, database, it's always good to have a view that when it will be in production, how much it is going to cost. And that's where calculator AWS comes into picture. You can create an estimate, and you want to go for S3. So let's go for S3. Configure. So if you see here, sorry, there's some background noise. I'm going to mute. Yeah, cool. Thank you. So here it says at which storage class you want, and there is if you see there's a data transfer also, which has option of how much it will cost. So I'll say go for S3 standard, and go to tell how much amount storage I need, how many requests I will make for put, copy, post list. It's kind of like how many read requests I will make, how many write requests I will make, get and select. I need to enter that. Data returned by S3, if you have that kind of visibility that how many GB data would be retrieved from that S3, or how much data would be scanned within the S3. Based on that, it is going to show you the full calculation that how much is going to there. So let's say I say that I need 1000 GB, in which data retrieved will be, let's say, 2 GB per month, and data scanned by GB, let's say, will be 100 GB per month. So based on all that, it's going to show you the exact uh, cost, and it's going to give you how it has been calculated.
So what is the data retrieved and data scanned?
Okay, so let's say you have uh, data of let's say 100 users, okay, and you want the data of 2 users, but you'll have to get the data of all the 100 users to understand which 2 users you want. In that case, data scan will be of 100 users, but ultimately after the scanning you'll be only getting the data of only 2 users. It's more like query or like scan. So
Okay.
when you make a request that I want a specific person, if that particular data is kind of you're able to reach to that particular object directly, great. If not, you're going to scan through all the data and then get the data which is going to be actually transferred. So if you compare it with a relational database, which you would be more familiar with, in relational database, what happens is that you are going to first make a query, right? So if that particular column is indexed, you're going to get the data directly. If it is not indexed, then you're going to make the query of the entire thing, scan it through the table, and then going to get the specific item which needs to be retrieved, and you're going to return only that item. So the item that is going to be returned would be the data returned. The item that is going to be scanned across is going to be the data scanned.
Yeah, so exactly. My question is, so here in the database, it's kind of predictive. Like if I'm trying to scan based on index column, I know it's gonna be like only smaller set of records versus whole table scan. But here, like how would I be able to predict like how many rows or how much data it's gonna scan?
So
I mean,
yeah, it becomes from the usage. So see, relational database you have used a lot, and that's how you're able to predict that. You know that, right? S3, once you start using it, once you start saving the data, you know what kind of data is saved in what kind of bucket, right? And that profiling over the time, you will be able to understand the kind of data it is stored, and when the kind of queries you will be making, the kind of data that is going to be scanned versus retrieved. It takes a more of a time. Obviously, like when you start it, you'll not be able to understand this because this will be a kind of a new thing as compared to relational database.
okay, got it. And one last question is like you said, like put, copy, post, like so whatever the interaction we do with S3, everything would incur cost. Like say if I just want to look at data in AWS bucket, so even that would be counted as AWS. I mean, sorry, S3 select.
Yes, it is going to be cost yes to select, but there is a kind of a free, uh, what do you call? Mm, per month there are 1,000 requests that are free or something like that in the free tier. Okay, so
Okay,
otherwise, if you see here, the costs are listed for put, copy, post, and list per 1,000 requests. The cost will be like $0.0005. For a select or a get, which will be mainly scans, for your scans it is even less, 0.0004. Does that make sense? But yes, each of these would be incurring a cost if they are outside the free tier.
yeah,
And the costs are pretty nominal. It's not that if you want to try it out, it's going to be a big buck in your wallet. No, it's not going to be that. So in general, like if you're going to use 1 GB, so if say it's like 0.02 USD, it's not going to be much. And anyways, for 1 year in the free tier, you will be having a lot of a free usage, so you can always go ahead and play. Okay, then let's move on to create a bucket. So if we go to, I'll again see, just go to your all services, S3, click on S3, you'll be able to reach this, create a bucket, give a bucket name, and this is important here. So the bucket name has to be unique uh, globally. Okay, so even if let's say I'll say demo mentoring and I'll have to give some random numbers so that it is unique globally. Your bucket name cannot be having a caps letter. It'll say no to that. It has to always have a, the bucket name must be unique and must not contain spaces or uppercase letter. It has to be always lowercase letters. You you can set a specific region where you would like to create your bucket. Okay, in case if you want, like options from settings from existing bucket, you can choose the budget. If not, we'll do it from scratch. So all the bucket that you create, you can, to start with, do not open access to the public. Otherwise, anyone will be able to access, your data. Will be able to add, delete, and so on and so forth. So it's like block all public access. Versioning, any data that gets changed, you can version it. Beware that if you version it, then any changes will mean that you will be incurring extra cost because the previous version is also saved, though the difference is saved, but then there is, like a cost to that. So bucket versioning is one of the option. Tags, you can always tag any AWS resource. That's one of them. Default encryption, and this is important here. So all your data has to be, for the best practice, should be encrypted in transit as well as at rest. S3 is a storage service, so the encryption would be mainly on the at rest. So server-side encryption. So if it is disabled, then all the data that is being saved in S3 is not encrypted by default. You can always choose to encrypt at the client side, create a client-side encryption, and then save it in S3. But in case if you want to have a server-side encryption, enable it. There are two types now, as you see here. And not important for cloud practitioner, but very important for your solution architect associate. There are two types of encryptions on the server side. Amazon S3, which is called SAC S3, server side encryption S3. It is by default, which is provided by the S3 encryption key. The second option is AWS Key Management Service Key, SAC KMS. Okay, so KMS is a key management service. So KMS, I'm opening another tab, is a key management service which can be used for both asymmetric and symmetric encryption. And this would be important for your solution architect associate examination, but just know that this is a key management service through which you'll be able to create keys to encrypt your data and store your data across AWS. It's not only for S3 or DynamoDB or RDS, it is for across AWS, all the service key management services integrated with almost most of the services. It is a fully managed service integrated with AWS services. So S3 has a default option of its own, or you can use AWS KMS. Now the KMS has multiple options. You can use a AWS managed key in which AWS manages the keys. If I click on AWS managed key, so as of now there is none, but in case, let's say if I'm going to use here AWS managed key and click here OK, it is going to show that AWS managed AWS S3 key is being used. You can always create your own keys. You can create your own key, whether a symmetric or asymmetric key. Topic for another day for Solution Architect Associate. We're not going to dive deep into it, but know these options, that overall there are two options, Amazon S3 key or a KMS service key. In the KMS, there are two options. Either choose AWS managed key or choose your, customer managed key. So we can enter it here directly, or we can click here and choose if there was created any key was created, or you can create from here itself. It's all the UI's way to integrate it with each other. Hopefully that is clear. So we are going to use AWS KMS key and AWS managed key for AWS KMS key. There is advanced settings. We'll go into it once we create the bucket. Later on, we'll look into all these advanced settings. So let's create the bucket. So I've got this bucket, demo mentoring to 3. So let's see here. If I go to AWS managed key and I click on refresh here. Now I think we'll have to add some data to it. So right now, compare bucket to a specific folder. Okay, so right now there is no data in this bucket. So we'll have to add the bucket. So now there are properties at a bucket level and at the object level. So any data that is added here is called objects. So we have properties at the bucket level and the object level. Again, it will be important for your Solution Architect Associate certification. So what properties are at the bucket level and what properties are at the object level. So for example, versioning is a bucket level. So if you enable it, then all the objects within this bucket will be versioned. Tags, default encryption. We have enabled encryption at a bucket level. Server access logging. So in case server access logging is enabled, then uh, all the access that is happening to these objects within this particular bucket will be logged, and it will be sent to a cloud trail and CloudWatch both. So we have all these, like kind of integrated services. Okay, permissions. As we saw, we blocked all the public access. We can enable them based on, like your requirement. I'll keep it, disabled. So ACL is another way. Again, it's going way too deep. It will not be required even probably for Solution Architect. It will be mainly required for your DevOps professional or SA Pro, where you would be able to control the access of the objects in the particular bucket using ACL, access control list. Okay, you can always do it through IAM, but it is more granular to do it via ACL. So it is both ways to do that. Okay, now without going into much detail, metrics is fine, management is fine if you have. So this is a lifecycle rules. Okay, so let's look into lifecycle rules. So create a lifecycle rule. In the lifecycle rule, I will be able to tell them that transition. So it's more like it. If I want to say that my data should be moved from one specific storage class to different storage class, that's why I would be using a lifecycle rule configuration, and then it's going to automatically move it. Let's say in a specific company, we do have a rule that uh, uh, regulatory requirement for 1 year, your data should be immediately retrievable, but after 1 year, your data should be retrievable within 12 hours for the next 7 years. In that case, you will be using the lifecycle rule that till 1 year, keep it in the S3 standard, and as soon as the date expires, or the object is more than a year, then move it to Glacier, or you'll move directly to Glacier Deep Archive. That's what the lifecycle configuration is for. Let's go back. Management. Replication rules, in case if you want to replicate the data, go ahead and use that. Access points is fine. Which all access points is required? Advanced topic not required at this moment. Object. So let's upload something. Okay, let me see if I have any object to upload. So I'm going to upload one of the white paper. So I just upload AWS pricing overview white paper to it. The destination is this the bucket where I'm going to upload this particular file. I can add more files. I can add a folder within this if required. Again, do I need to enable bucket versioning? No. In which storage class this particular object will be? So your object in a specific bucket can be in a specific storage class. So each object can be in a separate storage class. So I can use, these are the storage classes. Whatever we have seen there in the documentation, you'll be able to find that exactly same things here, that in how many availability zones it is being replicated versus what's the minimum duration stage, so on and so forth. I'll keep it simple, standard. Again, a server side encryption settings. Do you want to use the encryption settings that has been set for the bucket? So bucket has some setting that we have set, or we want to override that with our own encryption settings. We'll use the default bucket settings. Then again, access control list, who will be able to access it? As of now, the owner. I'm the one. I'll be able to read and write. I can give it a public access, but now And that's pretty much. I'm going to upload this file. So, okay, what it is saying is that the bucket versioning is not enabled. So your existing object is going to be overridden. Do I acknowledge it? Yes, I do acknowledge it. There's this, if you want to keep the version, you can always go ahead and do that. But I don't, so I'm going to upload it. So upload status is going to succeeded. Good enough. I'm going to exit. So now this particular bucket, if I go back here S3, this particular bucket has one particular object. I can click this object and I have multiple actions. I can download it. I can query with S3 select. So if it is S3, like a way I can query it, and this is where the scanning would be happening and retrieving would be happening. Yeah, edit the storage class, edit metadata. So all those options are there here. That's pretty much that I had to show on, from the hands-on perspective for the S3. I would request everyone to go ahead and use, uh, your free tier account to upload few files, and these all will be free. As long as you're not uploading terabytes, it will be free for you in the free tier account. So go ahead and feel free to, work with these. So I'll not be demoing it, but in case, let's say you have two users. Okay, so remember in the ACL it was like only me who was having the access, right? Read and write, not everyone. So if you log in with some other user and you try to access it, you'll not be able to see that because it is per user, unless you give the other user a similar kind of roles to access it. Any questions before we move on?
Yeah, Prasad, one like, not sure it's very important, but so you said one of the slide, the availability zone for these S3 objects standard intelligent like is greater than or equal to 3, right?
Yeah.
So is it, even if we are in a region where there are only 2 availability zones, even there it's gonna store at 3 different places, say Mumbai?
I'll have to check and get back, but yes, because it'll probably, then it'll save in the nearest other region.
Okay. So it will be kind of cross region, you mean?
I'll have to confirm that very frankly, but that's what
Okay.
we do claim. So if almost all the regions have more than 3 availability zones, but I know there are three. There are few regions we do not have 3 availability zones, and yeah, for them I'll have to confirm.
Sure.
Any other question? If not, let's very quickly look into probably the databases side of it. We'll not be having time to go into deep dive, but this again, I'm stressing 6 hours free digital training. That's where you'll be able to find everything. Quickly looking into the databases side of it. So if you go here, databases, right? So we have RDS, which is relational database service offering from AWS. DynamoDB, which is NoSQL database offering. Elastic Cache, again, not important for Cloud Practitioner, but very important for your Solution Architect Associate. And we'll be having one dedicated session probably for database itself for Solution Architect Associate. Elastic Cache is mainly for the caching service. It comes in two flavors: Redis and Memcached for AWS. Neptune is your graph database, and so on and so forth. They are, like if I go to AWS purpose-built databases. So if I go to AWS databases, we do have these many databases. So it's not like for every use case you need to use relational database, which is generally the like kind of norm that has been there in the past years. That for every use case we are going to use a SQL Server or Oracle. It's more like having a specific database for the specific use case. So apart from relational, we do definitely have NoSQL databases, but NoSQL databases comes in many flavors like document DB or white column or graph or time series or ledger or the key value. So these are kind of many databases that we have. Difference that you need to understand is relational database, or all these databases that you see here are fully managed by AWS, so that you do not have to think about installing them, provisioning them, or patching them. All of them are pay as you go pricing model. What does that mean is that you need not have to purchase a multi-year license of a specific software, and you do not have to purchase a server separately. All of them you're able to access it on demand with pay as you go pricing model. That's the major difference here, and you'll be able to find all of them here. As I said, if you go to database and okay, here this. So if you go here to RDS, you'll be able to see all of that here. So RDS comes in kind of like 6 flavors, I would say. I can create a database, and I'll not going to show, but this is what exactly is. It's Amazon Aurora. Amazon Aurora also comes in 2 flavors: Amazon Aurora MySQL or Amazon Aurora PostgreSQL. Amazon Aurora is a cloud-native relational database designed by uh, Amazon, mainly for having the scale that is required for the cloud. Then we have MySQL, MariaDB, Microsoft SQL Server, PostgreSQL, and we do also have Aurora. It's just that my account does not have that specific offering. That's pretty much it. I would like to touch upon database.